Hello, hello. This is a dandelion flower, and we have thousands and thousands of those, and it matches my t-shirt. And I eat about 10 or 15 or 20 a day, and I give Dave about 10 in his dish every day, and his health is improving. My liver or gallbladder, I don't know, it was kind of hurting sometimes, and I could feel like it had a hard time, with all the stress and all of this. Stress makes the body develop cholesterol even if you're vegan. So I also reduced the amount of horrible news that I have been putting into my head every day. So that helps. And I have to stay away from negativity, and so whenever someone approaches me with horrible news, I will, in person, I will say, is this a horror story? Then I don't want to hear it. All of this has been improving my health, and that's great. And I have to really take care of my own range, my own protective range, physically and energetically. I have to do it. I don't have any other choice. I am not a Buddha. I am not someone who has transcended all of this, someone who has become light. It looks like my shoulder is starting to become light, like I'm dissolving into light or something. But that's an illusion, because I'm far from dissolving into light. I'm far from dissolving the self and, being non-dualistic in every way. So it's something we should strive towards, but it's impossible to skip steps in our personal development. So yeah, I wanted to make this video. It's very bright outside, and I have to be here under my cedar tree, and the light is not very pleasing on my face, and yeah, it's painful to get older and have marks of aging in your face and all of this, and gray hair and whatever, double chin and all of this, it's not fun. It really isn't. And so, but when other people kind of rub that in, it is magnified by like a million, and that's why it's better if we skip that subject, and just talk about philosophy. And we can talk about that subject and aging and all of this, but what I suggest to people is, don't say to someone, oh yeah, you do look old, or yeah, I see I see how old you are, or something. Try to avoid that, because it really hurts. It hurts someone who's not a Buddha yet. And who is a Buddha yet? Huh? No one, nobody. Yeah. I don't see anyone except for the Buddha. So, and that's why we should be very careful on what we say to each other, because we're all full of pain and past, and in particular when the mother rejects us. That's really, 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 that's such a trauma that will leave its damaging cruelty on the rest of our lives, and will completely take us off course, off the course of happiness, of achievement, of confidence, of being ourselves, of being genuine. We can't be any of that because we have to create an armor around us, and we have to protect ourselves from further hurt. And I'm no exception. I am in it too. I have been terribly traumatized, horribly. It was, I don't know, but I've met a lot of people recently, and they had a horrible past, and I feel very strongly for them, but I could never, there's no way I can say that my past was any better. Yeah. So it may have been different in one way or another, but the coldness, the psychological unavailability from the mother is still the same, whether the mother gives you away to someone else or whether it is your own mother being cold. There have been mothers with a psychological illness called Münchhausen and Proxy, and it was some kind of German doctor who established that type of dysfunction, and it was named after him. And there's different types that he has observed. Of course, all of this is just a total sliding scale, and it's very hard to make a distinction between this illness or that illness. Sometimes they merge, and they're related, and there's a bit of that and a bit of that. But I have seen documentary films on women who have actually made their children sick deliberately in order to have back then they had house calls. They would come to people's homes, the physicians or the nurses, and so they would come to their home, and then the mother would not feel so all alone, or she would have a reason to bring the child into the hospital, and then she would get rewarded, and they will say you did the right thing to bring the child in, and yeah, this is serious, and so on. But it was the mother who created that illness in the first place in order to get recognition, in order to not feel so alone, in order to have someone there to communicate with. It's usually mothers who are very alone, where the father is leaving and she is nursing the kids alone. And it's usually mothers who are kind of reclusive and who, like, when they're around other people, they say nothing. And then eventually they end up being alone because no one wants to be around them. And then they will be so devastated, and they will not know how to express that to anyone. And my mother is 100% the type like that. Whether she did something like this deliberately, my brother and I, we were sick an awful lot when we were toddlers. We were sick like every month or so. And my father would leave her alone, and the irresponsibility of this. The irresponsibility of this whole thing, And then, like, a doctor would come And these doctors, they were so out of it. And this one doctor, a woman, she came over and she hit me in the back and made me vomit. And I mean, it's the barbaricness of all of this. Incredible, incredible. Thinking back to my childhood, the barbaricness of everything and the idiocy of things, that could have been avoided. At least now I have a chance to bring this up and talk about it and show people how incredibly wrong this is, to be a neurotic mess and have children in the first place. If you're a neurotic mess, if you're a motherfucking sick fuck, don't have kids, man. That's my message to the world. So, and I know my friends, they don't have children, and I deeply appreciate that. And many of them are wonderful people. And again, I love you. And there are many, at least 10, but men and women who like to be also closer, a little bit closer to me, and I just can't. Sorry, I can't allow it. I can't allow it because, again, I have been traumatized, and I have to guard myself, I have to guard my energetic sphere. I have to protect myself. I cannot be hurt anymore, whether it's deliberate or totally unconscious or out of not knowing. So the effect is still the same, and I have to protect myself from that. Please understand me. Yeah, this is not against you personally. I have to be very careful. And so I'm going to be even more careful from now on who I talk to, because I often get into it. I talk to people for months and months, and I get into long email exchanges sometimes. And the dynamic can shift at any time, and according to what I say or what the other person says, and we may accidentally hurt each other, bring up old hurt or associations, of this is, this is leading this direction. Oh, he or she is gonna hurt me, and they're gonna make me feel like this again, and I don't want to go there. So I understand you, and because I'm no different, I'm just the same. I'm in the same boat. And even though I seem to be knowledgeable with therapy, and I have worked on myself a great deal already in my life, and it opened up a whole range of knowledge and that I can report back, can be very conscious about, and can reflect upon, and can analyze, and can dissect intellectually. But that doesn't mean I have dissolved all of my childhood pain, So it's become a whole lot better, and I tell you something, the more it becomes conscious and the more you recycle that pain into knowledge, it cannot hurt you that much anymore, and liberates you tremendously, and it helps a whole lot, and also helps you to see things better from above and to know where the risks are. You have a better assessment of your own vulnerabilities. but yet at the same time you become way more conscious of other people's pain, and you become more careful in the way you're treading with other people, much more sensitive and cautious and gentle, and that's where we want to go to, and that's the direction we want to go to. But I still have pain, and I have to protect myself. So I can make videos, I can share things from my life. I'm happy to share things from my life and my mind with others. If that makes you feel less alone, if that makes you feel understood, and if it clarifies things and makes you see things from a different perspective, where you feel like, oh, after all, it's not your fault. There are other people who are in that situation too, and who tell you that it is not your fault, that the way things develop like this, and we become protective of ourselves, and some people act that out in different ways. Some people will act it out in a way of in a sexual way. Some people will act it out in a, men like to be tough or super intellectual, and women like to be the cutesy pootsy. So, and I've seen many women acting cutesy pootsy, and there's nothing wrong with it until you tell the other woman that you are cuter than she is, or something like this. Then it becomes a hurt again. And if you hit right into jealousy wounds of other women, that's not cool. But people do it out of not knowing, out of there's so much in the groove of their own self perpetuation, self image perpetuation, out of self protection. If no one is there to want me, then I have to make myself wanted. Then I have to make myself into this perpetual cutesy pootsy who is the embodiment of being wanted. So those are all act outs. I can strongly relate to this because I have that myself. I try not to. My intellect sees these things though before I even see it consciously, but my intellect will see it, and my intellect will say, oh, this would be way too embarrassing to act out like this. So that's why I'm not. Otherwise, I'd be dressed in pink and have my hair all done and bleached and makeup on and show my boobs, and my intellect stops me from doing it. I told my mother that once, and she said, thank goodness, because then I would have embarrassed her. So, but yeah, I totally relate to this. So I'm not finger pointing. I'm not telling you that you are a terrible person for doing this. I just what blocks me from doing it is feeling ashamed, feeling embarrassed about it. So I have to act modest, so that I don't have to feel like I'm a complete douchebag or something. Like, for example, Trisha Paytas, to use this example. I don't know, you probably seen her. An incredibly beautiful woman, but perpetual cutesy pootsy, and that's acted out in the most exaggerated way. It's like a cartoon of that, what I'm talking about. And she doesn't have any shyness about this, and good for her though, because really, I really mean it. Because that gives her a freedom, and that also tells the world what she really wants, and that's what we should be doing much more often in our lives instead of hiding behind this facade, of modesty or intellectualness or whatever, but deep down we want to be, we we just crave to be wanted, you know. We crave it, and it becomes acted out in a sexual way. And I understand it so well. Yeah. So I'm kind of like in every person's shoes, in that way. Yeah. I have experienced, but my feet hang out, or still they're bigger than any of those shoes because they don't really fit into any of these. But I know I know what's going on, so I know how they are perceiving things. I know that the people who try to be modest, like my mother, how they perceive things, that's even worse. And I know how the people who hang it all out perceive it, and they get terribly abused by other people, of course, particularly by those who are modest and would like to hang it out too, and would like to receive that that cutesy pootsy, um, that attention and that sexual want from men particularly, but they can't allow themselves to do it because whatever, their society would not allow it. They would look down on them, and that would be embarrassing or whatever. So I have that shame myself. I feel like, oh, if I dressed up in any more sexual way, then I would be laughed about or something. And then, then the older we get, then the more embarrassing it would get, actually. And that's like, then I can already hear the haters. You still trying to be sexy? With those bags under your eyes? Give me a break. Why don't you straighten out, or, something like this. Some people hear those kind of voices actually very loud in their heads, and that's regarded schizophrenia. For me, it's just, so far, it's just thinking about what they would say. So, but I do have a form of schizophrenia. I have violent thoughts that come into my brain. I have, particularly at night before I go to sleep, there are like violent movies playing out in my brain. Nothing else bothers me so much. I mean, there are people from the past that bullied me that would pop up and stuff like this, and that I envision kind of, bullying me, and that doesn't bother me. But what really bothers me is when I see violence, and I see violent things, like violent visions, like kind of like future visions or something that will forcefully come into my brain. So that's a form of schizophrenia. It's like when something happens in your brain that that when something occurs mentally that we don't really have much of control over, that eludes our control. Force thoughts, brain terror. I've only seen one person on the internet who had that within the last 12 years or so. There's one guy from Germany. I was shocked. He looked like someone I knew, but he was younger, so another another generation. I was absolutely shocked. Someone else who had that same thing happening. I've suffered under this. Oh, and then oh yeah, there was another guy from the U.S. in the OCD project. It was a reality show with some kind of famous psychiatrist, and they had 6 different clients that were participating, and I had every single person's affliction. I really had every one of them, some more and some less, but I knew what every one of them was talking about, and particularly one guy, like a truck driver kind of guy, like 50 or so, and fat truck driver guy, and obviously meat eater, kind of like libertarian or something. But he, the more I learned about him, the more I liked him, and because he started to open up about his feelings. And when he talked about his problems, I was shocked. There was exactly my problem. He had these forceful thoughts come into his head, and when he was around knives, he had this fear that his hand could become, that he could do something with that knife to hurt someone. He, but his brain was the opposite of that. Like with me, I'm the opposite of violent. And the thought that I could be violent is such a frightening thought to me. That is what I suffer the most from. And now I have revealed a lot about myself. And I feel very alone making these videos, talking about myself. I would really appreciate if any of you could come out of the closet with some of your stuff and talk about it. I know it's not easy. At least don't act like you are. Don't act like you are this perfect person and you have the right to judge me with comments. At least don't do that, because I have laid it out. And other than that, I do not have skeletons in my closet. I know a lot of people who really have skeletons in their closet. And of course they would never talk about it. There are people who murdered people, they would never talk about that. People who have tortured living beings, they would never talk about this, of course, because they're afraid of judgment. They can never get a girlfriend then. But at least don't come to my channel and poop there, poop out your self-righteousness or your pseudo-perfection and judging me or something, because there's nothing to judge someone for laying out their vulnerability and their problems in order to clarify things, in order to clarify why he or she cannot engage with someone else. Someone like that should never be judged. So I'm gonna leave it at this for now. Take care. Peace out.